Okay, could everybody please take their seats for this next session? Ready? Okay. Okay. Our next session we called Writers Making Waves. And because Shiloh Aquino and Whiti Hiraaka have both been making waves in different ways in the literary world, I'll leave that to them to talk to you about that. Anahera Gilday is our facilitator for and so that she's going to conduct a conversation with these two making waves, hopefully not too many waves. Thank you.
All the waves. Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Mihi ana ki a koutou kua whakarau ka mai nei te ata nei. It is my great honour to be here this morning. Here uri ahau no Ngāti Tu Korehia ko Anahera Gilday tōku ingoa. I have the great pleasure of introducing or reintroducing you to these two lovely, amazing, incredible, feisty wave-making writers that we have here. Shiloh Aquino is from Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Maniapoto. She's an award-winning author and journalist. Her debut novel, The Pōrangi Boy, this one here, was the winner of the Young Adult Book of the Year at the Children and Young Adult New Zealand Book Awards in 2021. She was a TV journalist for Mauri and has written for Newsroom, New Zealand Herald, The Spin-Off, Pantograph Punch, The Guardian, so many places. She studied full immersion te reo Mauri last year and wrote a regular column for Newsroom. She's co-hosted a podcast called Back to Kura and was named as a 40 under 40 influencer of Auckland University graduates, and she is working on her second novel this year. Would you like to introduce yourself? Introduce yourself.
Can you hear me? Kia ora. Katoa. Katoa. The mic's not working, but it's okay.
Try.
Kia ora. That's better. Kia ora koutou. He uri tēnei no Ngāti Maniapoto, me Ngā Pui Hoki, ko Shiloh Aquino tōku ingoa. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. Kia ora.
Ka pai. And I'd also like to introduce Whiti Hiraaka, who refused to give me her bio and said that she was an ornamental hermit. That's what I was supposed to say in her bio. But I happen to know that she has written 4 books at least, and her most recent book, Kura Ngai Tuku, just won New Zealand's big, giant, massive fiction award. So introduce yourself. Tūwhare tō now.
Sorry, that was a bit overwhelming. Thanks so much. Ko tongerero tōku maunga, ko Ngāti Tu Whare Toa, me Ngāti Whakaue, me Tūharangi, me Te Aroa. Oku iwi. Ko Whiti Hiraaka. Yeah, I am an ornamental hermit, so usually I'm at home just doing stuff. So, yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Welcome to the session, and this session is called Making Waves. Wonderful things that we do. I wondered, Shiloh, perhaps if you would like to talk about how you come to be known as someone making waves, especially in this particular context.
Wow.
Is that okay?
This mic's not working.
Yes.
How am I making waves? I think maybe to begin with,
Just a bit forward.
being here at this Writers' Festival is the beginning of waves that we're currently making. I remember last year I wrote an article about how Pākehā Writers' Festivals are, and sometimes I don't think before I write, and I just write how I feel. And I wrote about how uncomfortable I felt being a Māori writer at such a Pākehā space. And then, and then a couple of months ago I got an email from Robin, and she's like, hey, we've got a Māori Writers Festival right here with Māori writers by Māori for Māori, and I was like, wow, that's the beginning of something really incredible.
Well, your article that you wrote, did everybody read that article? Yeah, see. Your article that you wrote did make waves. In, I think, the week following that article, which called out the Auckland Writers' Festival, which I'll just say, I was approached by so many people saying, let's do a Māori Writers' Festival, let's do a Māori. We had so many people discussing this. So, I'm mihi to you for actually kicking off that action, acknowledging, of course, that it's an action that many have tried to make happen beforehand as well, and that there has been Māori Writers' Festivals for a long time, but not in this kind of format. So thank you. And Fitty, tell me about how you've been accused of making waves.
Have I?
Well, according to this.
Drama? I guess, in a way, my whole being is causing waves, and I hope that's what I'm here to do. I mean, it would be strange to live a life and not make any impression on anyone. I think Kurangaituku is making waves, particularly in Pākehā circles, because they haven't come across this kind of storytelling before. And it kind of amuses me when they say, oh, it's so edgy and revolutionary. Because I guess it is in Te Ao Pākehā, but in Te Ao Māori, I don't think it is. I think it's going back to the old ways of telling stories. So yeah, that kind of cracks me up. So yeah, I think that's sort of how I'm making waves. And I guess physically it's with this top today.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
It's definitely the top. So in terms of Kurangaituku, which is a really great place to start, and the structure of Kurangaituku, the very clear making wave structure that we're discussing, how did you come to that, and how long did it take?
Yeah, it took a long time. I'm not entirely sure how I came to the structure. I wanted the timelessness of pūrākau to come through. I wanted to get the feeling that you'd have if you were being told a pūrākau. And that's why you can enter the story whichever way, because when you're telling pūrākau, you might be telling it a certain way for a certain audience for a certain time. So that's the kind of closest I could get to in the structure of a novel. Yes, I wanted to evoke deep time. I wanted to evoke, traditional oral storytelling in a written form, which is an odd kind of challenge to give myself. So it took me a long time. I say 10 years, but it's longer than that because I can't admit that it's longer than that. So 10 years is what I can admit to, that it took me to write this. But yeah, it took a long time to get my head around it, to almost pull myself out of what a good novel is in the kind of Western sense. To
Kia
get back
ora.
to that.
Kia ora. So I think in terms of that, in terms of the unique structure, and for you as well, Shiloh, who do you guys write for? And maybe you could answer first. Who do you write for?
Such a good patai, and just hearing Patricia Gray say that she writes for herself, I was like, oh, that's so good, because I don't think I write for myself sometimes. And I think the reality is that we do live in a Pākehā world, and so sometimes I write with the aim to be published, and I'm trying to get rid of that whakaaro, and I'm trying to write specifically for myself, but also for Māori. But sometimes for me, it's hard to actually just put Māori in the centre of the narrative, because I feel like there's a lot of Pākehā influence in my life coming from everywhere. We go outside, it's what we see, what we hear. So, yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, something that I'm still maybe grappling with. But I do hope that I write for Māori, and that really is my intention, but maybe sometimes it doesn't come out.
Kia
like
ora.
that.
I think, first of all, I write for myself. I think there's layers of it. And I write for myself because the reason I write is so I can understand the world I'm living in. It's my way of engaging with the world. If I have something that, I don't know, bothers me or intrigues me, I'll write my way through it. So in that sense, I always write for myself. But I'm always thinking of a reader as well. And lately, not when I was first writing. I think, it is a journey to get to where it is. But lately, I've been thinking, actually, my stories are for Mauri first. So I had an email yesterday. I'm going to
Go there.
Go there. From my great aunt.
This is a really intimate setting and not at all being televised. Go.
From my great aunt, who's Pākehā, who's reading the book, which is awesome. Thank you. Kia ora, auntie. But she said the Māori words in it are distracting and they take you out from the story. Have you considered putting a glossary in the work? So, she's family. So I wrote a fairly terse email back saying, a fairly passive-aggressive one, saying, yes, I have considered this and rejected it, basically. I think it I think it takes away from the kupu Māori. I think it's a language that has just as much importance as the English, and if it was any other European word within the English, there wouldn't be a problem with there. So,
And this is the country of te reo Māori.
Yeah.
Nō reira. Kore kau ngā glossary, ne?
so that kind of brought out to me that actually I wrote this for Māori first. Awesome if Pākehā read it. Awesome if people from overseas read it. But first and foremost, this is a Māori book for Māori audiences. And you can all come to the party.
Kia ora.
Man, tautoko, I just want to share something to tautoko that. So, last at the Writers' Festival, so this is my book, The Pōrangi Boy.
Available now at McLeod's.
And so at the Writers' Festival last year, which I talked about, which is the Pākehā Mainstream Writers' Festival, I presented to hundreds of kids, and I remember looking out into the crowd and they're mostly Pākehā faces. And I remember feeling a little bit rangiroa on two minds about that. And then afterwards I went to sign, and all the kids that were buying my book were private school white kids. And I was like, I didn't really write it for, thank you for buying my book, but I didn't really write it for you guys. And then so I kind of just went home and I was like, am I doing something wrong? Is there any purpose of writing if it's not going to my people? If it's not getting out there? I want it to be going up north to the communities up there and the kids up there, not to private rich kids that go to school. So that's what kind of inspired the article that I wrote about the Writers' Festival. But it's a little bit of a tricky one.
It is.
Because I do like Pākehā buying my books.
Got to walk that line, right?
and it is, we have published the book, so obviously we can't control who buys the book or who reads the book. What we can control, I guess, is who we've written it for and who we've centred in the book. Yeah.
Well, a really great, a conversation that's come up a lot and that's going to continue coming up and I think probably get even bigger is the conversation of story sovereignty. So I'd wonder if both of you would like to talk a little bit about what that means for you, given we're talking about who we're writing for and how we do that, and what that means for you and what that means for you in your writing, in your content.
I'll start because I have the mic, so I should start. Kurangaituku is all about story sovereignty, really. I mean, it's a story about Kurangaituku reclaiming her voice and being able to tell her story in her way. And I guess that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor for us being able to tell our own stories in our own way. That's kind of where I jumped off from Kurangaituku. And I was talking about this last night, just having a look to see people I was talking to there. There they are. Kia ora. So talking about, what were we talking about? Yeah, talking about how I get questions about how this book is a subversion of hatupatu. And I reject that idea that it's a subversion. If I have to put it in any kind of Pākehā context, it's a rebalancing. It's telling the story of Kurangaituku and Tatupatu. It's we've had those threads of stories, for generations, for eons. but the ones that are well known, the ones that were published by Pākehā, are the hatupatu stories. So this is a way to rebalance it. It's not to subvert him. I like to think of having, and this is what Rangi said last night as well, having many stories that support each other, and I like to think of them as like muka when you're making thread. So many plies of thread make a strong piece of thread that you can weave with. So that's how I like to think of this story. So yeah, I think it's important that we have our stories and we tell them our way. So we have that health. Yeah.
Kia ora.
Kia ora whakatau. I think story sovereignty for me is just Maori being able to tell our own stories. So something that I've been thinking about is there was a quote by the late Moana Jackson about the impact of colonization, and I'm paraphrasing him at the moment, but what he said was the biggest impact of colonization is the loss of belief and the loss of faith, not just in who we are now, but who we once were. And the problem with storytelling, or the power of storytelling, is that stories tell us who we are. And if we have the majority of Maori, or our people who grow up disconnected from their language and culture and not on their whenua, and they don't really know who they are, then they're going to look to stories to tell them who they are. And the problem is when it's Pākehā telling our stories and telling them wrong, what does that do to an identity of a Maori person? You know, so to me, story sovereignty, first of all, the basic fundamental of that is Pākehā just need to stop telling our stories, please. I think we've been going on this for a long time now, but I think it's time to just stop. You can tautoko and pay us to publish our stories, but please just stop telling our stories, and then from then on we can take it from there, and we can have what Whitty was talking about, the thread and options and choices within our own culture of all the amazing stories that we have in different storytellers, like we have here at Kupu Festival. Right, today you can hear from all these amazing different storytellers, diversity, range, and that's amazing. So.
It seems quite straightforward to say we just should tell Pākehā to stop writing our stories, but can we? How would we ever accomplish that? Or what can we do, or what can we do, in resistance? Like what actions do we have to take? Not buy them? No, sorry.
I think some of the actions have already been started. So I'm looking at Huia, the founders of Huia Publishers here. So, taking Māori stories, publishing Māori stories in a Māori context is a good first step and a good continuing step. And yeah, I think some of it is our own sort of measuring sticks. Like, it's cool that I won the Occam. It's really cool. But does that mean much in Te Ao Māori? That's a recognition from Te Ao Pākehā, which I'm absolutely amazed and grateful for. But yeah, where's our own kind of recognition? Where will that come from? So I think that's part of it. Yeah, like actually us as a community owning our writers, owning our readers, and talking to ourselves for a bit.
We need to take over the systems of power, you mean? Oh yeah, good. Yeah.
I do want to say big mihi to Robin Barge and Brian Barge as well. Huia Publishers have been publishing Māori stories for 30 years. Now back then, I was probably not as popular, right? Māori and indigenous storytelling. And now everyone wants our stories now. And so, big mihi to Huia. But I was going to ask you, Anahira, about your whakaaro, about resistance, because you've been resisting for a long time. You've got a new puka puka out.
Who gave her the microphone?
You've got a new puka puka out and you have your own publishing, so kōrero mai.
Kia ora, thank you Shiloh, how lovely. So, yes, thank you. I just released a book of poetry called Sedition, and it was called Sedition deliberately. One of the poems in it is titled Sedition. But the word sedition is an interesting word because it kind of, it's a political word. It means you're going to get arrested for inciting riot against the government, which I've tried really hard to do and failed. And my family know if I get arrested, I'm happy about this. But sedition is only because it's the Pākehā government. It's not sedition for me, it's just sedition for them, I'm like, oh, it's really... So I am a huge advocate of resistance. I've also, and this is a question that I wanted to throw back to you two as well. So publishing itself is an act of resistance. And again, we mihi to Huia Publishers. What are the ways in which we can encounter publishing when we're publishing in mainstream publishers, perhaps? Or what are the things that we can do to retain our sovereignty of our stories? Because a lot of people publish through mainstream publishers, and that's kapai.
Yeah, I guess we haven't published through mainstream.
Well, I
Been
have.
with
No,
Huia.
no, Carl.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys have? Who were your editors? How did your process work within the publishing situation?
Yeah, because we're both published with Huia, so I think it's a different experience. I did publish Pūrākau with Witi through Penguin, and yeah, it was a different experience. But then again, I was being an editor rather than just a writer, so I was doing a bit of editing. So yeah, Huia does it in-house. For Karangaituku in particular, because I sprinkle kupu through there quite liberally in ways. So I don't speak Te Reo Māori fluently, if at all, just little bits. So I sprinkled in kupu with the abandon of someone who doesn't really understand the language too well. So we have Te Reo Māori editors on their team. So we had lots of discussion about what words I've used. And like, do you mean this, kare? I don't think you mean that word. I'm like, yes, that's right. So yeah, we had lots of discussion about that, and a lot of support around me doing that. And I told them, I mean, I've got a really good relationship with Huia, and I think that's the main difference for me, is that it is very much a supportive relationship. Like Huia have basically taught me how to write novels. They were there and they gave me support to do that. And now, with my Mauri Literature Trust hat on, we've extended that into Te Papatupu, which Shiloh went through. So yeah, it's about developing writers rather than just a book that goes out, rather than just a product. It's about the writers and the health of the community of storytelling. So yeah, that's my experience of it. But I think that's probably very different from mainstream
I've
publishers,
only
but
heard
I
tales.
don't know.
I don't have experience with a mainstream publisher, but I do have experience with working at a mainstream media outlet as a journalist compared to a Maori media outlet, and the difference is like day and night. I would say with Pākehā bosses, you have to explain why something is a story, whereas in Te Ao Māori, you don't need to explain. It's kind of just given why it's a story. I remember when I was in Tauranga and I was doing a story about something that was very racist, where, what happened? Sorry, I'm trying to forget. The community, the Pākehā community were protesting or like trying to stop the council giving back a building back to iwi. And I was reading through the submissions, which were anonymous and racist, like saying Māori are responsible for burglaries, why do they want the land back, racist. And so I wrote in the article, oh, this is racist. And then, talking to one of my Pākehā bosses, they were like, oh, that's bias. That's very subjective of you to say it's racist. And I was like, oh, no, this is racist. And, going back and forth like that. And so there's that kind of, I guess, relationship. And I think with Māori as well, with our stories, we're so connected to our stories, right? Like when we write about things that are affecting our people, when I did a story about wahine Māori in prison, like that affected me because it's my people. It's not something that I'm writing about this faraway thing or the statistics. You know, I'm writing about my people, and so it's going to impact me and my wairoa and everything. So,
Kia ora.
kia ora.
Rawe. In terms of that, you know, and sort of circling back to story sovereignty, there's a lot of people who are doing this intellectual land grab. You know, there's a lot of people who are wanting to write the stories that are not theirs. And I know you've said, like, you just got to stop. Like, I got that. But I'm like, at the same time, there's a lot of ways we can't whitewash all stories, you know, all stories that white people are writing or whatever. So they're going to have to write into these areas. How do they do that in a respectful way? She's going to save the world when she answers this.
Gosh, how do I answer that? So how do Pākehā, do you mean tell our stories in a respectful way?
Not our stories, but include mea
Right.
Māori, you know, like it's the, people are hungry now, they want to write it, they want to write. I've had some experience teaching students who are up and coming writers, and many are Pākehā, and all of their characters except the main character are Māori sort of thing. But because the main character's not, then it's not a Māori story. So I'm like, oh, but everyone else is. So, you know, like, that's not going to stop happening. What is your advice to those writers, or ways to get into that, and to other Māori writers or friends in the audience whose whānau who are Pākehā ring them up and say, oh, I've got a character that I'd like to include, and I'm using this very, very prestigious name, ka pai? You know, that. How do we navigate all that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of talking with Māori, or what's that word? I can't think of that word right now. But having Māori there right from the beginning. I really want to share an experience, but I'm scared because it's live streamed. So.
Could we just pause the camera? That'd be great. Like, we can just do what we like, right? Just pause on that.
I just want to get in trouble. But I think maybe an advice I want to share from my own experience is a lot of Māori, we didn't grow up in Te Ao Māori, so we're still trying to find our feet and navigate in a Pākehā world. And I've made a lot of mistakes. And I made a mistake last year where I agreed to do something with a publisher, but I didn't really understand what it was about. And until I started doing it, I was like, "Whoa, this is not going to work in a Te Ao Māori whakaaro point of view," because I was still coming from a Te Ao Pākehā. And they could have got that right if they had consulted Māori from the very beginning, but it was still Pākehā from the top, being like, oh, let's tell our stories, or we'll get a Māori to do it, but they're still at the top, right? So it's like we need Māori at the top.
Power.
Power, yeah. We need Māori at the top in terms of editing and all those things. So just a whakaaro noiho.
Kia ora.
Yeah, so I teach creative writing, so I get this a lot.
Yes, she does.
I get this a lot. So I always have the appropriation talk with my students sometime during the year. And I always ask them, why are you writing this story? So get them to think about why they're writing the story. And then I say, why are you writing this story? So get them to think about why they are the best person to write the story. And perhaps they're not. And then I ask them to think about, you know, whose space are you taking if you're writing this story? Are you taking an opportunity away from a person to tell their own story? Perhaps your job in this is not to write the story, but to support that person that needs to write that story, which doesn't go down well ever. But yeah, I think it's important to ask those questions of yourself. I ask those questions of myself when I'm writing things as well. Why am I writing this story? Why am I writing this story? Yeah, and sometimes I put stories aside because it's not my story to tell. And I think maybe I'm a better person to support someone to tell those stories. And anecdotes that will probably get me into trouble.
I love this panel.
A couple of years ago, I was asked to mentor a Maori writer who was writing a story from a First Nations, with First Nations characters in it. It was a First Nations story by a Maori writer, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't support this kaupapa. This has happened to us so many times, that other people have written our stories. I know you're coming from a good place. I know you think you're like helping to expose this First Nations story to people. But I think it's better to get a First Nations person to write the story. Maybe it's the urge for you to write the story is actually the urge for you to support that community. Yeah, and I agree with Shiloh. Getting Māori in for at the beginning, talking, collaborating, and particularly for secondary characters, staying away from the stereotypes.
So in terms of that though, if I am a young Māori writer, much younger than this, and I am very disconnected from my Māori tanga, my iwi, my hapu, whatever, and I just can write whatever I like, is that okay? Like if I'm writing a story that I really also don't know anything about, basically, even though I'm Māori, and this is only because this is our rōpū, I want to have this kōrero, but I wouldn't ask this question in another environment. But I just wouldn't. But I'm just is that cool too? Because that's sometimes really challenging.
So you're saying, are they writing a story that is from there?
Superficial, stereotypical, those kinds of things, because the lived experience isn't there.
I see. Oh, that's hard, eh?
Yeah.
And I think we're, as writers, you're going to make mistakes, and you're learning and you're growing as a writer. So yeah, I think there should be room for you to make those mistakes, and hopefully you're supported in it. As part of that appropriation talk I have with my students, I also say you can write whatever you like. Write whatever you like, that's fine. But just be prepared that there'll be people that will push back, and there'll be people that will call you out on it. And you need to hear that. And even now, writing Korangaituku, I'm waiting for someone to give me a growling for what I've done with the story, and that's fair enough. I will have to live with that because I've put that out into the world. I'm taking responsibility for what I've put out in the world. So yeah, I think that's part of it.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. It's interesting because Rangi Mātamua was talking last night about how he gets backlash and he's been doing his mahi for 30 years?
20, I think, yeah.
20 years.
Oh, yeah.
30 years, and he's a doctor and all that. And he still gets backlash from other Māori about it. So I think there's always going to be criticism from our own people, especially when different iwi have different whakaaro. But I think we should encourage our Māori writers to write from their experiences, because it's not our fault that we grow up in a world that is so colonised and so Pākehā. And like Whitty was saying, I want to tautoko that we will learn as we go along. And I also think that's why it's so important to be surrounded by a Māori community of writers, or to have tuakana there to be able to help and support you, and to say, hey, maybe think about this one or that one. And I'm really grateful because I've got Whitty and Anahira and Nadine and other really cool writers that I can send stuff to, and I'm like, is this too much? And Anahira's like, nope, send it.
Hit send, bro.
So yeah, I did have something else, I forgot, but yeah.
Adding to that, so yeah, Te Papa Tupu, which is a program for emerging writers, which the Māori Literature Trust runs, was a great place for me to start. So I started off as a writer in Te Papa Tupu, and then became a mentor, and then eventually a judge, and now I'm on the board for the Māori Literature Trust. So that's just a warning for anyone who's entering Te Papa Tupu. Once you're in the whānau, you can't leave. Anyway. I think that's like a practical way that we as Māori writers can support other Māori writers, particularly the Māori writers that are coming up and might be estranged from Te Ao Māori. I know a lot of the people I've mentored have been like, oh, I don't know about this story, it's not really Māori, is it? And I don't feel like I've connected enough with Te Ao Māori. I'm not, the whole imposter syndrome bullshit, really. And yeah, I always say, yeah, it is a Māori story because you're Māori. And the way you're looking at the world is different from te ao Pākehā. You have a different lens. But yeah, it is hard, especially if you're estranged from it. And I think we're all coming back to te ao Māori in the ways. Like I've just started my learning te reo Māori properly this time. And it's hard. It's hard. And it's, you know, there's a whole bunch of mai around it. And so, yeah, I understand that for people that are estranged from it.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was quite a tricky situation though when Maori, when we do write our stories and then a Pākehā will pick it up and think it reflects our whole culture.
Aye, this is totally what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it ends up contributing to the narrative. And that's not our fault though, right? Like Pākehā need to go and read more of our stories and, you know, the diversity of our stories. But yeah, that's just I mean, what can we really do about that?
Well, I think that comes right back to the beginning kōrero about publishing. You know, who are the publishers? How can we set up the systems to support for your publishers to publish more Māori and to the Te Papa Tupu program's ingenious, you know, in terms of nurturing people and making sure that they've got intergenerational support as they go through that and people that they can ask their questions to. Yeah, that would be kind of my thought. I'd like to open the floor to questions in a minute. And if you have a question, please feel free to stand up so that the person with the microphone can find you. And please prepare your gnarliest questions for these two. You've seen they can answer anything. They're fixing the world. Okay. Yes, do we have a question, please? Oh, there we go. Ki kora.
Kia ora, a little?
Aye.
Oh, okay. Kia ora, ko Cameron toku ingoa, ko Ngāti Awa toku iwi. I'm a Māori Affairs reporter in a mainstream setting, which is a lot of, it's quite a lot of pressure because the pressure to tell Māori stories, especially with my own iwi, all falls on my shoulders, and we don't have Māori at the top. We don't have Māori tikanga or reo, you know, consultation. It's all on me, and I grew up like very estranged from my Māori culture as well, way down south near Invercargill. Yeah, so that sets the scene. So I'm just wondering, like, how have you personally sort of overcome that māmai to tell the stories of your community and dealing with that pressure, especially when it's from your own people, because it's really hard. And
Kia ora.
love some guidance.
Ngā mihi e hoa.
Thank you.
You're looking at me. Okay, if you want. Okay.
Oh. Does that facial expression? Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's been, it's that kind of going back to who I write for. Like, I'm writing for me first, and I'm writing through my issues sometimes. Not that they always get out into the world, but sometimes I'm writing it, like, just for me. And then going out and trying to find community to support you. Hand over, 'cause I just drink.
Oh, first of all, I just want to say a big mihi to you, e hoa, and lots of love, because I know how hard it is. And I know there's a few journalists in here. Sienna was at the Herald, and Miriana over here was at RNZ, and we all know what it's like to be one of the only Māori in mainstream. So lots of love to you. In terms of advice, I would say if there's any other Māori journalists in the mainstream that you're working with, or that you work in, or anyone around there, I would say go to them for some support as well. And you have us as well. Here, he whānau tātou. To go for them for support, because I know for me, that was something that I had. And Stacey was a really big support to me when I was at NZME, when I was at a media place as well. But also, I just want to say, I feel like the criticism from Māori can hurt a lot more than when it comes from Pākehā. So when I was at a mainstream media outlet, I would get a lot of like emails from like old white men, and I used to get just used to it, and I'm like, oh. But then when I would get criticism from a Māori person, I would just be distraught. And a lot of it was on my pronunciation of te reo Māori. And that was when I was at Mid-Iron, so I understand what that's like. But I went to go and learn te reo Māori after that, because I was like, oh. But yeah, I would say try and find the support in where you are, and also just to remember the purpose of what you're doing there, because you're making a lot of change. And there'll be a lot of Māori who'll be watching your stories and being inspired by you. So tēnā te mihi ki a koe. E hoa.
And kei te tautoko te mihi kua mihia. But I also wanted to just share, you know, as Māori for me, I don't feel like I'm actually ever really alone. So there are whānau everywhere for you. They're everywhere. And, you know, all the ones who are in your industry as well, we can make waves. We can take over. We got to get together with our whānau and our friends who are also working in those same industries and work with each other. So behind the scenes, we've got a rōpū. Anybody heard of Messenger? So great. And we just flick each other messages quite often, very informal, very easy. What do you fellas reckon about this? Racist. Okay, great. You know, like, so that there's a community with you, you know. And if you don't have access to go see your aunties and stuff easily, this is one of the ways in which you can build that community around you. And I know lots of young Māori writers who are working in Te Ao Pākehā who have done this as a way to survive. Because actually, I honestly don't think, in my own experiences like that, that you really can survive that well by yourself in there. So, e mihi e hoa. Thank you. More questions? Another question? Kia ora.
Kia ora. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
There we go. So I'm not a writer, but I have a lot of friends who are. And because I'm not a writer, I get to be very forceful and be like, no, do this. And something that comes up for a lot of my friends is the narrative about, for Māori, whether or not you're writing a story that whakamanas te ao Māori. And as an outsider, I get really angry. I'm like, it's your story though, write it. And I know all of your work has dealt with so many different varieties of things. So how do you cope with that kind of kōrero within the community? How do you deal with that?
Kia ora.
You always look at me.
Oh, well, it's just you twos are on my left.
Whiti will answer this. Yeah, that's I think something you need to grapple with, or not you, because you're not the writer. The writer needs to grapple with themselves. What are they putting out in the world? Yes, I think it's important that you tell your own stories, and yes, I think it's important that there's a diverse number of stories, and that Māori are not all like happy, you know, rosebuds, happy, you know, huggy, lovely stuff all the time. No, it's part of our lives and us as humans that we're flawed, that our lives are flawed. So we need those stories too. I think at the moment though, the balance of those stories has tipped too far into those stories of violence, those stories of abuse. In the future, when there are more of our stories, I think, yeah, let's have at it. Just write whatever we want. At the moment, for me, I'm not going to say that a writer can't write whatever they want. Who am I? Anyway, for me, I think we need to rebalance that. So I'm trying to write stories that are, uplifting other parts of te ao Māori.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. There's a really good quote I've heard, and it's that our story should be trauma-informed, not trauma-led. So, you know, we have a lot of trauma, and especially intergenerational trauma, but our story should have layers to it. But it's not led by our trauma, but it should be informing people of what has happened to us. And it's still trying to find that line and trying to balance that, right? I think Taika Waititi does an amazing job at doing that. And I think we just need more stories out there, so there's a lot more diversity.
Kia ora.
Sorry, controversial thing.
Awesome.
For me, I think sometimes those traumatic stories are like catnip to Pākehā,
Me au hoki nea.
because reinforces what they think of us already. So I think that's part of the, I guess, mental calculations. Have that meme of that woman going with the calculations behind her. Part of the calculations and publishing stories. Writing stories for yourself to process your trauma, that's different from publishing them. So, yeah.
Kia ora. And, you know, I just wanted to also tautoko the kōrero here. I think my perspective on that exact question has changed over many years. Initially, I felt really strongly that people should be able to write whatever they wanted, but that was before I understood how narrow the gate for publishing was. And that if you write trauma narratives, people want to publish them. And that's really concerning. You know, that's really concerning in a different way, and that's not about the writer, and that's about the publishing world and the world that's in control of what reaches the audience. And so for me, I am really conscious that the stories we write now, and this is a change for me, I do write stories that are traumatic and terrifying and distressing, but I don't necessarily want to publish them. So it's a really interesting thing, and I think it's about the timing as well, and I definitely don't think that's necessarily the case for everyone. But it is really important for me to whakamana Mauri, te ao Mauri, when I'm writing. But I also want to add, and this comes from my kōrero with Patricia as well, I don't think we're very good readers, actually. I don't think we're taught in te ao Pākehā. I mean, I don't mean Māori. I mean, in te ao Pākehā, we're not taught to read between the reading. You know, read what's really going on and the complexities. We're asked to look at the trajectory of trauma and the fix. You know, I'm like, well, we don't live a trajectory of trauma and a fix. None of this colonization is fixed out. So, you know, there's no like time in which that trauma finished. So I think that our stories will be really trauma informed, but I agree with Shiloh's quote, definitely I feel like they should avoid being trauma led if possible. But that again is about the timing, you know. Kia ora. Tētahi anō question. Kia ora.
Kia ora kōrero.
Hi, Trin.
I just wanted to, first of all, like, beautiful kōrero, like so many nuggets of wisdom. Just want to mihi to you both for taking the time to share of your own experiences. I really wanted to ask, for you both, or for all three of you, when do you know the difference between the evolution of your story and when you're just simply adding past its point of completion? Please.
Nice.
No mai te kōrero, help me. Kia ora.
It's called guessing.
I'm going to answer it. I'll answer it because it took me 10 years to write a book. And part of that was like, and this needs to happen, this needs to happen, and this needs to happen. So I was lucky that I was having coffee with Witi while we were working on Pūrākau and explaining my book and using my jazz hands to explain my book, which I do to kind of distract from plot holes. And he said very calmly, just, Kare, are you writing 3 books?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, probably. So yeah, that just, I knew that anyway. I knew it in my, I just needed someone to like, just calmly tell me that. So yeah, I think you'll know it, and you know that you're just like, I'm avoiding doing this, but you just don't want to admit it to yourself yet. Kia ora.
I remember this kōrero from Nadine, who's one of the best writers in Aotearoa.
She's
Kia ora,
watching.
Nadine. Oh, kia ora, Nadine. Kei he koe. And one of the things she said to me when I was having this kōrero with her, because I was like, man, it's so taumaha, it's so heavy, like writing, and she said, oh my gosh, and now I've just forgotten her quote.
Just make it up, it'll be fine. He fiction writer koe.
I remember now. She said, writing is such a blessing, but it's also such a burden. And I thought about that a lot, and I was like, yeah, that is true. And she said for her, writing is a gift that she's been given, and when she writes, it comes from something else often. And I thought about that too as a writer. That's what happens with me, is that I don't just write to, like, I went to the shop and, you know, ate noodles, like, there's always meaning, and I'm sure that's for many writers as well in what we write. And I'm sorry, I'm going back to your partai, Trin. But I think that's the crux of it, is that like for me, writing comes from a higher power, and it is a spiritual experience when we write, you know, and so I think you just feel it in your gut, like Fiti was saying, you just know. Like you know that when you've written something great, and you know when you've written something not so great, you go and you take that out. But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Kia ora, kia ora. Yeah, I agree. I agree with what these guys have said completely and utterly. You know, like I'm interested to hear what Nadine's quote was, because she is a fount of amazing knowledge and so forth. I know I'm finished because my puku tells me. You know, like I just don't have another measure. And I also do similar sort of like little manu on the shoulder that says, you know, this piece, you love it so much you want it in here. And that's a real danger because it's rubbish. You know, the bit that you're like, I love this. This is magnificent. It's quite often the bit that I'm holding on to the tightest is the bit that actually has to go. I don't think that's always true, but quite often that's true, and I'm holding on to it for the wrong reason. It's not meant to be in there. And I hope that helps you with your pathway.
One last thing, I just remembered what I tell my students and sometimes tell myself, is I ask myself, why am I writing this? Which is what I asked before. And if I've answered that in the text that I'm writing, if I've answered why I started writing this in the first place, then it's done. My task is done.
Kia ora. Kia ora. I think that's a really lovely place for us to wrap up. I'd like to also just encourage all of you who have more questions. So I'm sure it's true for these two as well, and many of the writers here today, but I get so many rude upfront emails from Pākehā writers asking me everything. So feel free to send your pātai to anyone, because, you know, like other people are doing that just constantly. Feel free to make community, you know, that's for us. So, e mihi ana ki a koro mo tō manaki mai, mo tō I toha toho I o koro a whakaaro. Thank you so much for being here. Please, everyone, thank you, Fiti and Shiloh. Please keep making waves.
Yes, thank you to our wave-breaking panel.
Kia ora. Yes, I'll take it.
I've just got a couple of minutes before the next panel, if anyone wants to just have a quick stretch and walk around, and we'll be starting hopefully around about 11.